Hi, welcome back to my channel, Manga Hoarder. My name is Laura. Today I'm doing a tag video. This is the MangaTube tag. It was created several months ago by Christy Liu, who has a channel, and I will link her down below. You can definitely go and check her out. And if you want to do this tag, please do, especially if you have any manga content on your channel, even if it's just a little bit. It will help other people find you. I also will be linking a number of people or tagging a bunch of people down in the description below. Go and check to see if your name is there. You might not realize that I'm subscribed to you, because I'm subscribed to a lot of manga tubers or people who talk about manga just a little bit. So really what I've done with the tags is it's not so much that I'm forcing you to do the tag. Do it if you want, don't if you don't want to. It's more sort of a pool of recommendations for other people to go and check out. So if you're another person and are not going to make this tag because you maybe don't make, manga content on YouTube, go and check out those people, go and subscribe to them, because they're all making good content, and they might just be sort of undiscovered at this point. Some of them are brand new, so I don't know too much about their channels. I've only seen a video or two. Some of them are people I've subscribed to years ago and have been offline for a long time and are finally back, and it's about bloody time. So yes, you're all linked down below. Go and check to see if your name is there, but if not and you still want to do this tag, just do it. Just do it. That's what I'm doing. I wasn't tagged, doing it anyway, because we need more good manga tags. And also, who doesn't want to know about other manga tubers? I know I do. I love subscribing to new manga tubers. Anyway, there are 11 questions to this. The first one is to introduce yourself, and I've filmed this quite a few times. I am so awkward at introducing myself. I might actually skip most of this question. Hi, my name is Laura. I'm 41. I read comics. Bunnies are awesome. The end. I'm not going to talk anymore, because there's something about small talk that makes me the most awkward person on the entire planet. Small talk and Laura do not mix. Let's move on. Question number 2. When did you start reading manga? 2003. Question number 3. What is your favorite genre? Manga. Question number 4. How do you read manga? Digital, physical, library, etc. Yes. Is this really irritating to you? Let's go back. Question number 2 is, when did you start reading manga? 2003, I borrowed Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, as you know, because it is the book that I talk the most often about on this channel, in 2003 from my public library. I now own 5.5 full editions of this series. It is still my absolute favorite manga. If you have not read this manga, go and read this manga. It is one of the most brilliantly written and illustrated titles I still have read to date. Anyone can read it. There's no sort of overarching demographic. There's no sort of overarching theme that I think would put any particular reader off. I think you should read it. It's brilliant. Anyway, number 3. What is your favorite genre? I say manga just because it's the thing that I read the most of. It's really hard because genre is such a subjective term. It's really just a way to categorize. I read. I like reading pictures over reading words, and I like reading manga over reading other types of comics. And then within manga, I like reading, at the moment, I'm more interested in sort of literary or drama or historical fiction. I think that's sort of where I'm interested. This year, 2020 has really done something to my tastes and my likes and my interests and anything that I want to pursue. And a lot of the things that I have been interested in up until 2020 are just things that I have, like, they're almost repulsive to me at this moment. I really just want to read things that are slightly more serious. I think maybe because the world is sort of in chaos, so serious times, call for serious measures. So it's time to read some serious things. Comics in general are not necessarily the most serious thing unless you get into very particular genres. So that is basically what I've been reading lately. But I love all manga. I love all genres. I love all demographics. I will read it if it's put in my hands. And right now I'm gravitating towards things that are a little bit more independent, a little bit more graphic novels versus serialized stories, things of that nature. But that changes. It changes all the time, so I couldn't really tell you. Number 4 is how do you read manga? I read primarily physically, as you can see from my collection behind me. I collect physical manga. I also borrow a lot of manga from my public library. I am what the public library calls a power user. It's a term that the library uses for people who borrow an excessive amount of material on an excessive schedule. And that is what I am. I borrow every single manga from the public library that they purchase, and I'm always on top of what they purchase. Maybe for a particular reason, I purchase them. So, that's what's going on. Also, I am reading some digital titles, partly because the public library has digital manga, partly because you can read digital comics on other avenues. But this year in particular, I am venturing into the digital realm of things. I'm less likely to read digital comics just because I have enough comics on my shelves to sustain me for the rest of my life. I am more likely to read prose works on a digital platform. And I actually have recently purchased myself a small tablet for the express purpose of reading digital comics and digital prose works this year, just because I'm not going to be buying as many comics this year. It's just not a good idea for me. Number 6 is what types of videos do you make? Mostly like you see here. I am sitting in front of a camera and I'm talking to you. And in the past I've done a lot of hauls. I will probably do a lot of hauls in the future. I'm just not doing a lot of hauls right now. That's basically where I sit here and talk to you and hold up books and show you what I've bought and not read. Hopefully this year I will give you lists of books that I'm hoping to read. And I probably will, and I'm really hopeful that I will tell you about what I have read and explain to you why you should read it yourself. Really what I expect to share here on this channel is just small conversation about the manga that I'm reading. It's basically sharing my manga reading life in a very small way to you. And that's what you can kind of expect to see here. Number 7, what do you hope people will get out of your channel? I hope people will, 1, find titles that they've never heard of before, and 2, feel no pressure to have or read or love comics the way that I have or read or love comics. I think everybody can enjoy comics in any way that they want. They can enjoy whatever kind of type of comics they want, and they can do it however they want, and nobody should feel pressured to do their hobby like anybody else. So I'm hoping that at least you feel encouraged to try comics or manga, or even just reading out. I hope you feel encouraged to or inspired to read, and then I hope that you find some interesting titles. I usually buy things I think that are slightly different than other people in the community. I probably am showing you a larger backlist just because I have been collecting since pretty much the dawn of manga in North America. I have a pretty substantial backlist. So hopefully you find some cool titles here that you can go and investigate and look for yourself. But apart from that, it's just super duper casual chit chat here, and I'm just happy that you're here. So let's talk about comics below. That's all we're doing, right? Like, we're just enjoying comics, and we can enjoy it all together but differently, and that's cool. We don't have to be the same. We don't. Number 8 is what hobbies do you have outside of manga? That's not a thing, as manga has taken over sort of like every avenue of my life. I do manga. That's what I do. I do manga. I am interested in languages. I do like to study languages, and I've really gotten more into studying languages as of 2020, particularly Japanese. But you know why I'm studying languages? It's so I can read manga, or it's so I can read other comics from other cultures. There's very few reasons why I would be studying languages outside of being able to read. Because that's my thing that I love to do. I like to be involved in art and stationery, but a lot of my art and stationery and drawing and making things either comes from traditional Japanese craft, or they're, you know, stationery that I've bought in Japan, or it has something to do, or I can merge it with some sort of Japanese art tradition, or merge it with, you know, like just Mod Podge things with manga. You know, my hobbies are so interconnected and intertwined with each other. It's really hard to say where one starts and one ends. I don't have things that are separate from manga. Manga is my hobby, and everything else sort of connects to it. Number 9, what's up next on your to-read list? Well, that's interesting. Let's see what we've got here. I'm not going to show you the manga that I have up next, because I do have manga TBRs, and I think that those ones are going pretty well, or at least I think I've had one up so far by the time this video goes up. But next up in my nonfiction reading, I'm going to read Why Comics: From Underground to Everywhere by Hilary Shute. This is actually a pretty new purchase, and I flipped through it so far. I really like the layout of it, and I think it's going to cover some really interesting topics. It's just sort of like a general comic study, and all of the chapters are questioning sort of an aspect of comics. And I read one, and then it transitioned into the next chapter, and it just had this really beautiful transition. Just makes so much sense, particularly as a comic that just has that flow. So I haven't even read it yet, and I'm already super impressed. But it says things like why disaster, why superheroes, why sex, why the suburbs, why cities, why punk, why illness and disability, why girls, why war, why queer, and why fans. And just sort of questioning these aspects of comics and why they exist in comics. It looks really, really fantastic. The next prose novel that I'm going to be picking up is Lightboxes, a novel by Shane Jones. It's just a shorty little novel, and I only peeked at it because what a kind of quirky cover. It does sound like it's got a little bit of kind of a literary, magical realist angle to it. It talks about the inhabitants of a town who are experiencing perpetual February, and that means unending cold and darkness. It turns out that a godlike spirit named February is punishing the town for flying, and bans flight of all kind, including hot air balloons and even children's kites. It's February who makes the sun nothing but a faint memory, who blankets snow, who freezes the rivers and lakes. As the punishing weather continues, children go missing and adults become nearly catatonic with depression, all but giving up hope. But others find the strength to fight back and launch a war against February. So it just sounded absolutely hilarious, so quirky and weird, and this is just the kind of novel, this premise, this just strangeness, is very much up my alley. So I'm really looking forward to this. And then next month, probably after this video goes up, next month is February. So I thought it would be the most appropriate time to read this, February. And it's still only early January when I'm making this video, so the next Japanese novel that I'm going to be reading, or Japanese manga in this case, I'm going to be reading is Yume no Soko. That sort of means like below the dream, or under the dream, or the depths of dreams. I'm not 100% sure, but Yume is the word for dream. And if you're part of the BookTube community, I'm sure you already know that Books with Lala has started a year-long buzzword challenge where you read words in titles of books based on whatever month. And for January, the word is dream. And so I've decided for that, because I already had TBR plans for the year, that I would use that buzzword challenge and try and combine it with my Japanese language collection. So I've only actually got 2 where I would probably need to fill it in with some other title. I don't have anything for two of them. I think it's Lost and Last, that I don't have books for. But I did have one for Dream, so I thought I would try this out. This is probably the very first manga that I ever bought. I got it in Japan. I can't remember. I think it was in Nagano Broadway, which is a place where you have a lot of like secondhand goods and pop culture goods and lots of fun like that. And there's a really good manga shop there in Tokyo. It's Mandarake. It's a Mandarake shop. I think that's in Nagano Broadway. I don't know. I could be totally wrong. It was a long time ago now. But I did buy that there, and it just stood out to me. It was so incredibly beautiful. I only found out later that this is by Hisai Iwaoka, or Iwaoka Hisai, and that's the same author as Saturn Apartments, which I am also hoping to read this year. Just so whimsical and interesting. Let me find a really good picture to show you. So there's just these like quirky little pictures. It sounds like it's about a girl who's in a coma and she's sort of in this other world, and it looks like all of the characters in this world are animals. So there's a lot of pictures of like birds and suits and things like that. Of course I haven't read it yet, but over the last year I have been studying Japanese, particularly memorizing kanji. And as I flipped through this a few days ago when I was looking for books to read, I realized that I could understand most of what I read, which is one of the most satisfying feelings. Like, it's astounding. It's astounding. Because there is no furigana, which are the pronunciation characters, those first set of characters you learn when you're in, kindergarten, so that you can read phonetically. There's none of that in here. I believe this is probably a seinen manga, so there's none of that in there. There's none of that help, and this has always been an impossible, read for me. I flipped through it so many times. It's so beautiful, but I can read it now. I'm so excited. So that's what I'm going to be reading next, apart from whatever manga I read. Number 10 is, what do you look for in other manga channels? Genuinely, do you talk about manga? And are you reading it legally? I'll subscribe to you if I see that you have any manga content, but as soon as you start talking about scans on your channel, I will unsubscribe. I will not resubscribe, and I will not do any sort of collaborative things with you, just because I think that's so toxic. And I make allowances. I think some people are just naive to the fact, but I think particularly in the manga community, particularly if you do buy comics, or if you're of a certain age, or you read a significant amount of comics, I think you have come across this problem and you have made the decision to do things illegally. Yeah. Anyway, so I won't subscribe to those channels, but other than that, I subscribe to everybody, just because I'm so pleased to see people talking about manga. There's very few manga channels that actually talk about the kind of comics, particularly right now, that I'm interested in, but I'm still so pleased to hear the conversation of manga. I don't watch as much as I would like. I just don't have the time right now to watch everybody and watch everything, so I really do stick to very particular kinds of videos, but that doesn't mean that I'm not subscribed to you. So, like if your channel is entirely vlogs, I probably don't watch any of your videos, but I'm still subscribed to you. And maybe one day I'll have time to watch them, but I just find them really difficult to watch. So yeah, if you have manga content on your channel, particularly if you're new and you don't talk about scans, feel free to link yourself up down below. I'm like, even if it's, once or twice a year, that's enough content for me to subscribe. I think most manga channels, they either, there's a handful of us who are solely manga, that's all we talk about, but there is quite a lot of MangaTube content in BookTube. A lot of people do a lot of crossover. I think Shay is a pretty good example. She does tons of romance novels. I think she's really fallen into the dark side now and is doing quite a lot more manga content than she ever did at the start of her channel. But there's a ton of just regular book fiction readers out there who also talk about manga from time to time. So I'm subscribed to tons and tons, hundreds. of people who talk about manga, which is just, I don't know, it's so encouraging. It's so encouraging to see everybody being excited about manga. Yeah, and then there are also a handful of solely comic book channels who talk primarily about North American comics, primarily American comics, not Canadian, mostly about North American comics, who will occasionally talk about manga. They generally, at least in my experience, talk more about kind of seinen titles, particularly like Junji Ito is incredibly popular, regardless of what you read. He's incredibly popular, and there's, you know, a few others that tend to get talked about. So I subscribe to a lot of just regular comic book channels. I love comics though too. I just don't read. I don't have time to read everything, and I have subscribed to a ton of BookTube, and a ton of MangaTube. It's by far the smallest chunk, but a ton. Anyway, I think that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching my channel, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye for now. Why does my head look so big compared to my hand? It's the same size. Sheesh.